famous artist, and he was ultimately banned from the Museum of Modern Art in New York because he would come in with an overcoat and he had paint on the inside, and he would go up to his own painting and make changes to it, which meant that they had to take it down, they had to do a new scan of it, they had to do whole new documentation of it, and finally they just banned him from entry to the MoMA.
Ouch.
And, so it is, if I'm hearing sort of what's under what you're saying, is it's just a feeling that, okay, it's done. I feel like it's done, and I may not feel that way tomorrow or in 5 years. The painting you pointed to, I had finished, I'd sent it to the gallery, and it had been in the gallery for a year, and I just never felt comfortable with it, so I came and removed it and took it home, because it just wasn't finished. And I think that's important for everybody, all of us who paint and make art, is to be really gentle and respectful of your feelings about what's going on with your painting. Because until somebody falls in love with it and takes it away from you, you can feel things that you want to work back into it. And it's not breaking the rules, and it's not saying that the painting was bad before. It's that you're in a new place and seeing with a new eye. And what I really, really like about these is the tortured surface that you've got, and where you're going back in and roughing it back up, but you keep going back over with these pristine lines that you then damage. Because if you notice, you know, there are lines that appear to be really, really neat and clean. And this dark green one is it's the only one. It's the only one that's absolutely clean all the way across. At the ends, I'm not talking about the ends, because you're sort of wisely keeping us from speed racing off the side of the canvas with ends that go on forever. And it also says something about the nature of paint and the nature of painting, that they do not have ends that wrap around the canvas or something like that. But that, with a quick glance, is the only one that's actually pristine, because the yellow one, which I thought was going to be the second one, has this wonderful little hint of green in it, so that it opens the line up to experience. It opens it up to us to go, wait, what's going on here? Who's the squares, rectangles, lines? Mondrian. We have a Mondrian in the museum, one of the museums in my town. And I'd only seen them in photographs until I saw that one. And I always thought they were very, very neatly done. And, you know, yellow is yellow and red is red, and the blank spots are blank, and they're not. The paint is just worked and tortured, and the lines are fragmented, and sometimes you'll have a lost line that rejoins on these paintings that I had grown up with nothing but my assumptions based on nothing but photographs, which is a big issue in modern art history. It's the effect of seeing art in photographs and how it warps our perception of them. But anyway, back to this. I think, like the other paintings we talked about yesterday, where you're using, do you mind me mentioning the paintings where you're using piano rolls and taking that pattern of music and turning it into a pattern of dots on the picture plane. And this is, to me, sort of an extension of that, where I can stop thinking about radical social issues, and I can start thinking about the intellectual process of making art when I look at those paintings and these paintings. And so that, to me, gives me an opportunity as a viewer to start going, why is it that this really is art? And why does this color make me look down here at that color, but that color puts me over, you know, I look at this line, but then what's happening in my eye from this angle on the side, I look at this bright green line, but what's happening in my eye is right in here from this angle, that becomes a different gray than it is when I stand in front of it. And so even with something that at first glance is highly regimented, is using color to make me move around the canvas, which is also where torturing the surface with sandpaper, wearing it down, is painting. When I talk to my students, I talk about unpainting is more important than direct painting, because it's what you're not doing at any given time that's creating space, it's creating movement. When you're working over here, it's doing something down here, and that's what's happening with the tortured surface. If we had this, we would, as Westerners, we would go left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, because that's how we read. But because this has been worn down and broken, and tiny little dots like that smudge of green that's there, and then these verticals that appear, keep us moving around the canvas. And one of the things that's so important in work is giving the viewer time to spend time in your head, because that's what a painting is. That's what a sculpture is, whether it's watercolor, whether it's found object. It's something that came out of the artist's head. And these magnificent chairs that I covet heavily are something that came out of an artist's head. And what I found myself doing when I first got here was just holding on to it, not sitting in it. I stood next to it and I held on to it. And it has a human touch to the wood, which is what happens here. If this was pure and clean, it would be industrial and cold and harsh and mean-spirited. And that would be a valid commentary. That would be a valid art statement. But what happens here is something that could be harsh and cold is made warm and inviting and says, come here and consider this. And while your eye is here, I'm going to tease you into this place over here. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do for a viewer. And it's a very complicated thing. It's very subtle. And so I'm sort of talking about this one, but I'm talking about both of them because they're two in a series. And I appreciate the level of thought that it takes and the persistence of looking. You know, they talk about the persistence of vision in art, but the persistence of looking on the artist's part is what leads you to your truest voice. And I think they speak very well for you.
Thank you.
And they speak very well for themselves.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now